everybody. Welcome to Got Culture. You're supposed to do a thing where you leap in. First time. And the first time I'm hosting this Game of Thrones podcast because there's many things to be talked about. And usually I was told there was a melody to leap in and people go, God Culture. That's what I've heard from
Game of Thrones, we like it, so...
There you go. So we can bring that back in a future week. But for now, I'm Scott, your host. I'm joined by Rachel Shackleton.
Hello.
And Simon Gallagher.
Hello.
And we're going to try and debate, dissect, argue about the general sort of tone and the general feel of Game of Thrones in the modern age in 2019. Because we were coming up with different sort of talking points around Game of Thrones. And for me, ever since Beyond the Wall last season, there's been a very notable shift in, like I said, in tone and the way that they sort of tell their stories. And a lot of it feels lighter and feels a lot less shocking. It feels a little bit more predictable, and I feel like they've shifted into more of a mainstream show, more of a mainstream feel. So I want to initially put that out and get some thoughts, because I know that Sai doesn't agree with me at all. Go on.
I don't not entirely agree. What I don't agree with is the idea that it being a mainstream show is in any way bad.
I'm not necessarily saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's notable.
Yeah, it is.
Noticeable.
It is notable. So one of the things that I like to argue about when this comes up is, if it wasn't a mainstream show, it wouldn't be as big as it is, and it wouldn't be able to pull off the best spectacular things that it does. It's mainstream in the fact that it's popular.
Yeah, speaking of pulling off things, see also the Dragon Ride.
Oh, yeah, God. But again, I don't agree that was necessarily bad. Like, some of the CGI, okay, but it's a TV show. We could have had Doctor Who.
We've had Battle of the Bastards.
Yeah, but there was no dragons in it.
No, but if we're talking about budget and pulling stuff off.
No, but it's slightly different to spend loads of money on something that's massive.
Sorry,
and something that's completely made up.
Yes, go on.
Like a dragon. Mm-hmm. That is difficult.
Yes.
Dragons don't exist.
Therefore, I'd say don't do it.
The dragons do look fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah. They do.
Like, as general sort of, models and renders of them, they're brilliant. I always forget the specific names of the dragons, which I know sucks. But
Drogon, Viserion, and Rhaegal.
Yes, I don't know, but I know those three, but I always forget which one was looking at him when he was making out with Dany in the whole bit.
Drogon.
It was Drogon?
Yeah. Drogon's the big one.
That was the bit where they got to, in one of the newer episodes, just show off, like, look how great this dragon looks, the close-up to its face and everything. But Rachel, what do you think about the general sort of conversation at hand?
Well, I mean, I...
As a book lover as well.
I feel like, I did read the books. I am a self-proclaimed hipster in the way that when something gets really popular, I tend to not like it, which is why I've only ever played Fortnite once, for example. But
you missed out on the crouching and the shooting and the building.
I'm okay. Like, I know that's that's an awful reason for being sour about it, but like I am going to admit, when Game of Thrones did start to get really popular, when they did start obviously overtaking Martin's books, it's gotten a bit more predictable. It has gotten very Disney, which I have noticed recently, especially in the last season. There was nothing really that shocked me, and that was what got me into this series in the first place. Was that I like something tearing my heart out, surprising me. It was just something so new and different, and they have lost that recently. I feel.
think Disney's a really good term there, because I was going to talk about the comedy, which is my thing I always go to when we talk about Marvel movies and Star Wars stuff, because they have also gone down the same route of this like mainstream approach to comedy. Things like in the latest episode when they finally come back across, oh god, I forget the man's name, stand-up comedian dude, the guy that's in charge of the thing with the wall with the dude, and he says, oh, look at the blue eyes, and he's like, I've always had blue eyes.
Tom!
Save me, not Tom, and the dude that he talks to.
Yeah, the
guy
Dolores
said
something,
the guy we keep seeing in
Yeah,
Newcastle.
because he lives nearby. I was like, that guy that's down the road, but yeah, not him. That idea that they can sort of just, do a big tonal shift and go, here's a joke, we'll just have something. And I know Sai loves that
was
stuff.
literally the best moment in the episode.
Well, that says more about the episode.
It was the best line in the episode.
I actually have to agree.
Yeah. It's fine, but that would never be in an older season. Like that sort of exchange would never be.
I don't know. I mean, it's because most of the time during the early seasons, when it was closer to Martin's books, Tyrion was the guy, and you got a lot of comedy from his like pithy, acerbic put-downs and things like that. And now they don't do that because the show doesn't like Tyrion anymore. Yeah,
well, they've kind of because they've got so far ahead in the show. Like, I mean, he's still, as far as I know, he's still in prison in the books where they left him. Was that?
No, he had escaped and killed his dad.
Right, okay.
He was,
but still,
he's with Daenerys across the sea at the minute. Yeah.
Right, because it's like, that whole thing where Tyrion used to be the sort of like, I don't know, the comedy relief in certain scenes. Like, it feels like, and that's the thing with the last season and a half or whatever, is that he's not really had a whole lot to do. Like, he can be boiled down to drinking and knowing things.
It's basically it's a provocative decision because, like a lot of the conversation about criticism for Game of Thrones at the minute is there's too much fan service,
right?
Which I don't think is a terrible thing.
No,
if it's done badly, then it's bad. if it's done well, then it's good. I don't think fundamentally fan service is bad when a lot of people do.
Rach, you made a face there.
Like I think Rach is good. But anyway, in terms of Tyrion, you can't say that it's a show based entirely on fan service and also that Tyrion has been sidelined, because sidelining Tyrion is the absolute antithesis of fan service.
True.
It's like everybody wanted him to continue being the guy. And
Yeah.
then they pushed him aside and said, screw you.
I think, yeah, for the first few seasons especially, but that sort of spotlight has shifted onto Dany and Jon, and they're very much the spotlight couple kind of thing, even to the degree where I think they rushed those two getting together. I think it was just, we need this to happen for the sake of the coming season, so, we've had a couple of scenes. And they even overlaid it with the revelation of the whole who he really is and Aegon and everything, and yeah, he's sleeping with his aunt, and let's go forward
Even
and everything.
that was the big reveal.
Yeah.
Even that was because people predicted that a long time ago, so it wasn't that weighty. But don't get me wrong, I do really like the direction the show is going in, because it is different from the books, because it means I can enjoy both of them separately, and they're both very good. I'm just like, just for the sake of argument, saying that I just want to be surprised. I just want something really awful to happen, because we just haven't had that in ages, and I just think that's what the show needs at the minute.
I was going to say, because that's another talking point as well, is how much is this sort of, whatever we want to call this, whether it's a tonal change or it's a different, maybe the script writing is a different attitude in the writing room or whatever it is, whatever you want to call that, is that just a natural extension or a reality of the fact that the show is this big? And they kind of go, okay, well, way more people are watching this now, therefore we're going to go down this route with the comedy, or we're going to frame scenes in a more palatable way or whatever.
I definitely don't think the comedy is even that
well,
much
not
more
entirely,
different.
But it's part of it.
I think it's just spread out more. You look back at the early seasons, and Tormund was hilarious all the time. The Hound has been hilarious all the way through.
The Hound's phenomenal, yeah. But, okay, go on.
But it's like, there hasn't been... I understand that moment of the dragon looking at them making out. People have said that's a comedy moment. But it's so important that character is a character.
The dragon.
Yes,
right,
exactly.
Yeah.
Drogon has to have a personality, because he's going to die if they just kill him.
Yeah.
And he's got no personality whatsoever. You'd be like, oh, this is the whole... I've forgotten his name. Hedwig's... When Hedwig dies in Harry Potter, what they do in that is J.K. Rowling reversed Hedwig's personality in order to make the death not matter as much.
Okay.
Like to make it easier for the fans to accept, basically. So Hedwig comes off as a bit of a dick.
Isn't Hedwig
before he
an owl?
dies?
Hedwig
yes.
is an
Right,
owl.
I'm not a Potter man, so...
So...
Yep.
They're doing the opposite with Drogon, because you have to feel something when Drogon dies.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just another incident.
Well, see, this is perfect though, because in the episode of the newest season, Bran literally tells Dany, "Hey, by the way, your dragon's not dead; he's been resurrected," and she doesn't do a thing.
She is not bothered.
She wouldn't even know at that point.
I mean, obviously, she's maybe keeping it all inside. She's very good at keeping everything sort of balled up. You could tell when she was speaking to Sam that she was wee bit gutted, wee bit like...
But though, she literally says to Jon, like, these are my children. Like, that's how much this matters to me. And that was one of the things where I was like...
There is a problem with that scene in the fact that there should have been another scene. So her suppressing it and not wanting all of these northern people who hate her, she doesn't want to show weakness to them. So that sort of makes sense. But it only makes sense if you have a scene where she then has a moment with Jon and says, I'm really quite
I'm pretty
sad
good,
about that. But instead, what you get is they just go and... do some touching of each other.
Yeah, they do that. No, but even before then, you get Dany's next line, and not talking about her dragons, is, "I don't think your sister likes me."
She seems concerned about the wrong things. I mean, it's not very good character direction for that moment. But it does make sense that she wouldn't react. It doesn't make sense the way they then followed it.
That's the thing, and we have to fill those gaps in, which I feel like we didn't have to do before. And that could just be nostalgic, like romanticizing the past seasons kind of thing. Even though I have rewatched quite a lot.
There was a lot of stuff that had to go into that episode, and I think it just hurtled along.
That's all it
slightly
is.
in the wrong
We've
place.
had to squeeze in the last season into 6 episodes, so I feel like that's maybe what got in the way of the first episode.
Maybe.
But,
I mean,
we could have had it could have been a longer series. We could have had 2 more episodes, probably, of exposition. But then it would have been exposition, and people like as the fan service thing. where they're trying to deliver on spectacle. If they'd made it 8 episodes long, 3 of them, well, probably 4 of them would have been no battles. And people would have been like, I've come here to see battles.
Maybe.
I don't want.
That's
the
what
chatty
Rachel says.
episodes. Though.
So do I. Yeah, I mean,
the
that's
character development.
Yeah, same.
And hopping in between like all the different characters, like those were.
Which is probably the biggest change.
Yeah, well, that kind of ties back into the whole title that we've gone with, the idea that it's lost its unpredictability, because, like, obviously everyone knows that there's going to be the Battle of Winterfell, and it's pegged as the 3rd episode in the season. They've been talking about it in all the press junkets and all the interviews and stuff, all the different, like, the 55 night shoots that it took and everything. And so we know to expect a massive thing in episode 3. And so that, in essence, kind of reframes the way that, like, for me at least, reframes the way that these first 2 episodes sit, because I know there was a lot of really meaningful reunions, but it did feel a little bit like we're wheel spinning until we can actually do the main point of the season, because they've telegraphed it so early, which they didn't used to do.
It's moving chess pieces around before you get anything interesting. Well, it's not anything interesting. It's still really good. Like that episode was still a really good episode.
Yeah,
of course. Didn't.
It's just, I don't know, there's a quality to, like I said, it comes through in a lot of the different aspects of it. Like, there are those major reunions, like the Hound and Arya, or like obviously Jaime and Bran, which I just feel maybe an earlier show might have shot it differently or something to give it a bit more weight.
But then it's like you're saying that whole side of it, Jaime coming back, the Hound seeing Arya, that sort of stuff, Arya meeting Gendry, that is fan service. That is like a reward almost for people who've been with this show since the beginning, and that is just a symptom of it being the final season, I think. So maybe saying it, like posing it as a negative.
No, not the negative. I'm just exploring the things.
He did in
Game
private.
Of moans, but carry on. Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Like, maybe we shouldn't be posing it as a negative. Like, it's all really cushy. It's all really Disney. But the thing is, they are setting up these characters for hopefully
to kill them all.
To kill every single one of them.
That is the thing.
Rachel can't wait for more.
We could talk a bit about as well, like, because again, that idea of unpredictability, I think, goes into the older seasons. But how much did you guys think over the course of those seasons rolling out that it was this master plan unfolding in front of you? And then as we realized that they got ahead of the books, did that sort of fall away, or have you viewed the show the same way the whole time? Like, no, they know exactly what they're doing, and that's it.
No, I think there was a definite split between.
Could you
pre-Morton and post-Morton?
Could you tell when they ran out of source material, essentially?
Yeah,
I think that's the crux of it.
But I think it was on purpose as well. Like, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Like Rachel said, you can enjoy the book and the TV show.
They're drastically
different,
different, really.
Time.
Like, yeah.
It's just George R. R. Martin's a better writer than the show writers are. It boils down to that. It's not
faster though.
No,
is he?
exactly. Like he probably hates the fact that the show went ahead of him. But what we're gonna do? Like, people would die of old age if we had to wait for him
for another 13 minutes. That's what I
Oh God, he's a way to die of old age before we finish Game of Thrones.
He just said. I've just read an interview this morning actually where he says if the show had been true to his vision, it would have been 5 extra seasons, which is great.
I would have been up for that.
But also. Not great at the same time.
I mean, do we really have a drilling down as to the exact reason why? I know they capped it, and it's because they're going to elongate the episode lengths and stuff. I know the first one wasn't that long, but some of the future ones are going to be potentially up to an hour and a half. And so that seems to be the thing. The reason that they went shorter is assumedly just because everything that they've been given from J.R. Martin they can compact into those episodes.
It was
because I would go for the longer runtime, but
it was initially when it was announced it was because of money. Basically, budget, they couldn't make 2 more features but then it's HBO and it's the biggest show in the world, possibly ever. And is that
money
probably could have justified it
going into the likes of the Battle of Winterfell, whereas we might have maybe appreciated more character-focused moments that extrapolate on certain relationships and then build up on those reunions.
The Battle of Winterfell is going to be the greatest TV episode.
It is
ever up to that point, and then it might be outdone by another one.
See, the thing is with that is even you just saying that you've now built up this huge expectation.
Oh yeah, totally.
And I just have a horrible feeling that it's going to get.
Another thing with that as well is like it's kind of became this show where everyone just guesses the death, and that was obviously the memeable side.
We literally did that on a video.
No, I know, and that, but in the widest cultural sense possible. I mean, like Bet365, all these different betting websites are taking like the odds on Jon Snow being the one on the throne at the end.
It is,
and it's become this sort of that's what everyone says. Like, I like Game of Thrones. Who's gonna die? And it's it's become its own meme in that regard, where it's like, well, this is the big battle. This is where your bets get paid off, and then the story is almost kind of secondary to the spectacle in some degree.
I mean, there is something really, really cool about that. If something can permeate through pop culture into like the wider frigging world, that is really, really cool. It's really nice to be part of this big sort of community who are all really, really obsessed with finding out what happens.
But as a knock-on effect, you think about stuff like the fact that websites like Bet365 or whatever, all these different betting platforms are sort of, looking at the odds for Jon Snow being on the throne at the end or whatever. And for me, that kind of changes the whole dynamic around the way that they, frame the show. Because we had that massive fake out in Beyond the Wall again, where Jon just fell in the lake. And I think you bought into that kind of thing because the way that they did it.
That was the most stressful episode ever. I thought Jon was away. I thought Tormund was away. I thought, heck, Thoros did die. That was sad.
Yeah.
But then, he wasn't exactly a very weighty character.
Hey,
it was
Don
sad.
Darion's my dude.
Thoros.
I love Don Darion.
I liked him, but I thought someone big was away. I thought the Hound was away, or I thought Jon was away.
Well, all the fake outs with the extras, where someone would get attacked either by the demon polar bear or whatever, and we would be like, who's that? Oh, it's an extra.
The red shirts.
Yeah, the red shirts. Yeah, and that was the whole thing. And it's like, I feel like something like that wouldn't be in an older season. So I don't know how you guys feel about that.
That is true. So
that felt like part of the tipping point.
Yeah, I do agree that the culture of people expecting people to die has changed the way that they write things like that. Mm-hmm. Like they've done it with Tormund more than once now.
Yeah,
because they know that everybody thinks he's going to die, and they've now pretend killed him 3 times. I can't deal with it.
It is going to be, though, it's going to be the HBO that cried wolf. He's actually going to die at the end.
I hope he doesn't. It's fine. We're all fine. We're going to be fine.
That's the thing, though.
Nobody talk about it.
With this wider sort of, cultural weight or popularity of these different characters, how much do you think that gives them what people refer to as plot armor? Or maybe even just, popularity armor, where they're just, it was always that thing back in the day with Lost, where it was like, okay, we can't kill Sawyer because he's the fan favorite, and that's the reason people are continuing to watch. And so, how a lot of people now will tweet about, if Tyrion goes, then I'm done.
But
and it's how much are they aware of that?
Yeah, I don't think anybody has plot armor. I think Jon Snow's about the only one who probably does, and maybe some of the lesser characters. Sam has plot armor because Sam is the writer. Mm-hmm. If you go with that theory,
he writes the book.
Yeah.
So
at the end, it's going to be him as an old man reading.
Would you quickly
to his grandkids?
Chain.
Yeah.
We
can quickly delve into that. The idea that Sam Tully is the guy that survives all of this, and the whole Game of Thrones is him telling the story of everything that happened because the weird spirally things in the opening credits are in the library that he's in or was in last season.
But I honestly think that the next 5 episodes, maybe not the immediate next one, but I think something big's going to happen in that episode. I think we'll lose a fair amount of characters, even if they're not necessarily major ones. What they represent will be. So I said this in the last podcast. I think in the Chatty Faces, it hasn't gone out yet. Watch out for it.
Give it a minute. That
the Unsullied and the Dothraki will both die, and that'll be the major thing that happens in that episode. And I think there'll be a lot of death, and I think
there'll certainly be a lot of death.
There'll be a lot of surprises in this season. And I think that first episode was designed to make us think that there won't be as many surprises this season.
Well, that would be nice.
It's a bit of a red herring.
Do you think as well, in a wider sense, you talk about chess pieces on the table or moving things into position. We've kind of had this flirtation with the unification of the different houses. Obviously, Cersei went back on her word and everything. But because at the outset of this season, it's literally just stop the Night King. And so J.R. Martin's saying look, I would have dragged this out because there's more to do with the tension between the families and the hierarchy and all that kind of thing. And they have sort of streamlined it. And so, assumedly, after episode 3, I don't know, something blows back out again and we have a season's worth of stuff to get through.
Well,
otherwise, what? Are we just fighting the Night King for the whole
Season
season?
3, they lose at Winterfell and they retreat. Episode 3. They retreat to Dragonstone, probably.
This is prediction territory.
Yeah, it's not spoilers. I don't know.
Well, there aren't any. I was just making sure, because there are leaks.
Yeah. No, I haven't seen anything. I just watch MCU leaks.
You drink and you know things.
But episode 3, they'll retreat, and then the Night King will continue and probably go south, and then we'll fight the Golden Army and kill that off entirely.
Yes.
And then the Night King...
Death.
The Night King will die.
Bring the death.
Not in the last episode, and the last episode is going to be all Cersei versus...
Oh, you think that's the thing? It's ultimately going to be that? Because, another thing that
Cersei is the big boss.
Right.
They're saying, basically, that the Night King is the big boss. But he's not.
No.
He is the pre-big boss.
He's the catalyst.
And then all of a sudden, mega Cersei comes out.
I want to see, Cersei and the Night King, Mortal Kombat stuff. Cersei just grows 2 extra arms. It's she's actually the baddie.
Gets a massive hammer.
Cersei bitch slapping the Night King. And that being the end of him would be hilarious.
And then the entire army goes because they're all connected to him. I mean, yeah, maybe.
I don't like that idea.
There was, I mean,
it's gonna
to delve into theory territory again. There was that whole thing. I think it was either Vox or Wired put a video out saying like they thought that the whole show was potentially about climate change and that the Night King represents the inevitability of the planet itself, like trying to reclaim or whatever, or dying out. And then that was then followed up with an interview with J.R. Martin, who said like, "Is this the thing?" And he said there are heavy climate change messages in the show. So do we think that that leads to the inevitability of, I don't know, like that idea that this season is singly focused on just look how powerful the Night King is and look how inevitable it is that he succeeds regardless.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense because you always you have the doubters like Cersei who are like, oh, believe it when I see it. There's no such thing.
Literally, yeah.
There's no such thing as global warming.
When I see it.
But yeah, that's I never ever really thought about it like
neither
that.
did I until it came out, and then it's like, actually, that's incredibly like, yeah. And you thought the motivation behind
boring.
What? Why? Go on. Why is it boring?
I mean, it didn't need a secret hidden message.
Turn your face to me.
All it needed.
It's fantasy.
All it needed to be was medieval fantasy, yeah. But knowing that he had that in the back of his head when he was writing it,
it's clever. It's clever.
I mean, a nice little Easter egg.
Martin's writing process seems to be, and whenever he's talked about it, is that he pretty much starts with a character, imagines their motivations, and just sees where the story takes him. It's why it takes him so long to do stuff, and why there's all these weird little.
That's not why it takes. I'll tell you why it takes him so long to do things.
Well, that's part
because he's always out buying hats, and he goes to book festivals.
That man has a very good array
in
of hats.
like places you would never expect. If somebody invites him to a book festival, he's like, yes, I'm coming. It doesn't matter where it is. If it's in your house, I'm coming.
I will be there.
I don't need to write anything.
Actually, I will totally recommend. There's a really good interview with him and Stephen King talking about their different attitudes towards writing. That's a really good thing to check out. But that idea that you take the character and you go forward from there. Like even if you take the base staple of the Night King as okay, he's eventually going to be this walking manifestation of environmental change or whatever. Then
Josh Brown's hairspray usage has caused the Night King.
He is the real Night King.
I wonder if we've just sort of pinned there, like what the when you were saying about the Night King not being the true villain, because he's so one-dimensional. We know nothing about him. He just wants to he just wants to kill everyone.
Just wants to raise his arms. And,
so that is one thing that they could surprise me with, is if they actually give him some kind of explanation. And why Cersei is such a good villain, such a much better villain, because she has all these motivations.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
you can tell that she was written by Martin and the Night King was written by.
I don't think he's even written really. I just got a lovely image of in Gremlins 2 when the intelligent gremlin starts talking. After he like growls, I just want that for the Night King. Actually,
don't talk. No.
I do. Like obviously, we have the whole thing with the dragon glass inside the Night King and yada. You have that as his how he was created or whatever. And I do like the idea of building up to whatever the Night King's first words are. But once you do that, you do potentially get away from he is just this force of nature and we just need to deal with it and we need to come together. And you have that sort of side message that war is ultimately pointless. I mean, we need to deal with
the difficulty with that climate change message is. Nobody wins except the Night King, if that's the case.
Unless we come together and do something about it.
It could end up, I suppose.
Would that be a good ending?
If Game of Thrones ends with the most positive, humanity-restoring message, that would be
David Attenborough suddenly starts doing a voiceover. I'm here for that. If
David Attenborough is actually on the throne the whole time.
That Simpsons episode where they wreck Springfield and the two Native Americans are standing looking out over the thing. If they do that as well, that's fine.
It's just Jon Snow and Dany looking
I'll be
back
furious
over.
if any of these predictions come true.
But I guess with all of this rolling together, do you think that Thrones will have, just because of this, will have to have an unpredictable ending? And it won't just be as simple as Jon Snow on the throne at the end?
I don't think... one of the fundamental problems with Game of Thrones is we're all too clever about it.
Yes.
Like... There's this thing in wrestling where they talk about smart marks.
Okay.
Where everybody's too invested, everybody knows too much behind the scenes.
Mark is a dedicated fan, by the way.
Yes. And a smart mark is a bad one.
Yeah, I do from my Attitude days. Carry on.
Yes, and everybody is like, well, actually, I know what's going on here. We can predict things that are happening. It isn't just that it's dead predictable. It's because we're very informed, and we don't just look. We don't just look at these. I don't care. We don't just look at these episodes from a point of view of fans, and this is all fans. It's not just like us, even though we analyze it more. And because they took 2 years to get to where we are, they give us 2 years of more over-analysing. So it can't be unpredictable because we've predicted every bloody possibility that could happen.
I'm with you, but I think they've lowered the bar because their show is so bigger. And things like the examples that I gave, when Dany gets told that her dragon's dead, that the reaction is not it's not in line with the way that you would have reacted, or the level of script writing that was there before. These
no,
are
it
potentially sloppy
again.
written scenes.
It is true. It's missing scene.
Yeah,
that's the sloppy thing. It's not the characterization. It's the missing scene.
But I think it's kind of all part and parcel of the same thing. Like the show has gotten bigger. They're trying to adapt to that. They're trying to cater to a much bigger audience, whilst also catering to like the really hardcore that have either read the books or just stuck with it since the beginning, and that's resulted in the last 25 minutes of this conversation. So
it does have good points and bad points behind it. I think that's what we can take away here.
It's a good show, but for now, you guys can all find us on social media. But yes, this has been the Got Culture podcast. I will say it right, and I've been your host, Scott Taylor, joined by Rachel Shackleton.
Got Culture. Thanks for
Simon
watching.
Gallagher as well.
I'm not singing. Goodbye though.
Bye though.
Got Culture.
Robots in disguise.